Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I have a big 2-in-1 painted polish review for you. So Painted Polish is releasing the part 2 of the Rainbow Chip Realm collection tomorrow, and she released part 1 back in May, but I never got around to swatching it, so I figured I can combine both of these videos for double the rainbows. So the Rainbow Chip Realm obviously features a rainbow lineup of colors, and they all have these black metallic flakies in them. Of course, I will be doing some comparisons and save my thoughts for the end. For now, let's get into the swatches. We're obviously going to be starting with the part 1 collection, or the lighter shades. So the first one we have is Cotton Candy Crush, and this is a light pink crully base with the black metallic flakes. So I am going to do my best to not sound like a broken record with this voiceover, but I really did have the same experience more or less with these polishes. They all were amazing formula-wise. As you saw on the first coat, I did get really nice coverage with just very minimal light spots, so this was opaque for me in 2 coats and it builds up so nicely. The next shade we have is Just Peachy, and this is described as having a peach crully base, but I would just say it's like a light, warm orange kind of color. I wouldn't really call this a peach, but either way, it has the same black flakes in this, and this obviously gives me Halloween vibes. So while I'm not really craving the shade for right now, I am just so excited to wear this in the fall. It is so cute. So yeah, this one had another amazing formula that was really even coverage on the first coat and fully opaque on the second. Next up we have Bananas For You, and this one is described as having a light yellow crully base, which I feel like is accurate for the most part, but I don't know if it's the black flakes in this one that makes the base color lean a little bit like chartreuse to me. So I don't really love this tone of yellow necessarily, and it's kind of upsetting because I want to like it. I feel like it reminds me of like bumblebees or something, but yeah, this is not really my cup of tea. Great formula though. But next we have possibly my favorite from this collection. This is Mint Chip Madness, and this one is described as having a mint green crully base. And I would say that's pretty accurate. I do think this green is on the minty side, and again, it has beautiful coverage on the first coat alone. I definitely wouldn't say any of these are one coaters so far, and I wouldn't advise doing a thicker coat just because the crully base might dry down a little tacky, and these also dried down a little bit textured with all of the flakies, but it's nothing that a glossy top coat can't solve. So yeah, here it is on 2 coats, and it just reminds me of the ice cream so much. I love it. The next shade we have is Teal or No Teal, and this one is a light teal crully base with those same black metallic flakes. So I do really like this one. I feel like it's picking up a little bit more blue and less teal on camera, but once we get to the comparisons, you'll be able to see how teal this one actually leans. And I think this is another favorite. I feel like it kind of reminds me of like a speckled robin's egg kind of color. So it does definitely give me more spring vibes, but I still think it's such a pretty shade, and I just like how the black flakes give such a nice contrast and detail to this polish. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Next up we have another blue. This one is called Sky High, and it's a sky blue crully base. So there are 3 blues in the lineup in each collection, but this one is the most true blue. You'll see what I mean when I do the comparisons in just a moment, but yeah, I actually really enjoyed this one too. It had really great coverage on the first coat again, fully opaque in 2 coats, and the color was just so beautiful and bright, even though this is technically part of the pastel line. So yeah, I really like this one too. And the last quote-unquote blue that we have is Posh in Periwinkle, and this one is described as having a periwinkle crully base, which I definitely would say is accurate. I mean, it's definitely a very blue-leaning periwinkle, but still very much a periwinkle. And I really like this one. This one was a little bit more sheer for me on the first coat, and you can see once I do the second coat how vibrant it gets. So I definitely think, again, that these are worth building up in 2 coats. Even if you get really great coverage on the first one, the color just gets so much brighter and it's just so pretty. So yeah, I like this one too. And rounding out part 1, we have Lilac Lush, which features a lilac crully base. So I also really like this one. I just think it has such a beautiful purple color. And I also really liked the combination of the black and purple for whatever reason. It's not something I normally would gravitate to, but I just really like this one. So yeah, another amazing formula that was fully opaque in 2 coats, and I don't know if I would go as far as saying as it's one of my favorites, but it's definitely up there. I really like this shade of purple. And here is part 1 all together, looking super cute and bright. So we have the 3 blues on the bottom, but I would say that Teal or No Teal and Sky High are probably closer in tone, but as you can see, they are pretty different, where Teal or No Teal is a little bit more green leaning and Sky High is a true blue. And here's a little side-by-side of Lilac Lush and Cotton Candy Crush, because I would say that pink is more of a blue-leaning pink, so there's a little hint of purple to it, but they're definitely not dupes. Now moving on to part 2, this features brighter and bolder rainbow shades. So the first one we have is Bubble My Yum, which is described as a bubblegum pink crully base. So I normally wouldn't call this shade of pink a bubblegum pink. I would kind of call the pastel version a bubblegum, but either way, this is definitely another blue-leaning pink, but it is a lot brighter to the point where it almost leans like an orchid pink, if that makes sense. So it's not normally the kind of pinks that I go for, but I think this one still had a great formula at least. The next polish we have is Papaya Don't Preach, and this one features a papaya orange crully base. So I generally think papaya is a good descriptor for this color because this orange does have a hint of warmth to it, but at the same time it can read like a very true bright orange, so I almost wish it was a little bit warmer or more corally to give more of that true papaya color. But either way, this is definitely another Halloween spooky kind of color for me. So while I'm not in the mood for it right now, I definitely will be very excited to wear this come October. Next up we have the Bee's Knees, and this is described as a bumblebee yellow crully. So like the last yellow, I'm just not really loving this one, which again bums me out because especially for this one, it has that bumblebee inspiration. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't be wearing this in a full mani, but maybe I would try to incorporate it with some bumblebee nail art because I feel like this shade would just be so perfect for that. But yeah, I just don't think I'm a huge fan of black and yellow together. So even though this one had a great formula, I just am not crazy about the color. And that little spot in the bottom right corner reminds me of when you have like mustard in the corner of your mouth, so I am so sorry. Up next we have Guac My World, and this one is described as a guacamole green crully base. So I absolutely love the name. I'm just such a sucker for punny polish names, and this one is probably one of the best. This one also had a really great formula where I feel like it was one of the most opaque polishes on the first coat, but I still had a little light spot near my tip, so I still ended up doing 2 coats just to get full opacity. And yeah, I feel like this brightens up so much, almost to the point where I maybe wouldn't call it a guacamole green. I feel like this is such a bright lime green, but without having the yellow, so I like it. Up next we have Teal With It, and this one is just described as a teal crully base. So I think this one is just so gorgeous. I think it's picking up again a little bit more blue than teal, but once we do comparisons, you'll be able to see how teal it actually is. And it's just so gorgeous to me. I love it. So formula wise, this one was a little bit sheer on the first coat, but again, fully opaque on the second. I really just can't say anything else about the formulas because they really feel so perfect on these shades. So I'm just focusing mainly on the colors. But yeah, even though this one is part of the Brights collection, I feel like it kind of gives me spring vibes because it reminds me of a robin's egg. Next up, we have Deja Blue, and this one is the True Blue Crelly base. So this is another one, no surprise, that I really love just because it has such a gorgeous blue base color. This one was a little bit sheer for me again on the first coat, but it builds up to perfection in 2 coats, and it is just such a stunning color. I normally do love and gravitate towards these kind of blue shades, but I'm really curious to know what you all think about the black specks in them because so far I'm not really minding them. And the last blue that we have is Blueberry Bliss, which is described as having a blueberry crelly base. So I absolutely adore this one. This one is just so bright and vibrant and the exact kind of blue that I love wearing in the summertime. And again, this one might be a little bit sheer on the first coat, but it builds up to be fully opaque in 2 coats, and the color just pops so much. It is so pretty. It's definitely one of my favorites, if not my top favorite from this part 2 collection. And rounding out the part 2 of the Rainbow Chip Realm collection, we have Grape Scott, which features a grape crelly base. So this one is so bright and fun. I feel like there's something almost cartoonish about this purple. Like, I don't know, it's not exactly giving me Barney vibes because I feel like Barney is more of a reddish purple, but I can't put my finger on it. But yeah, this one is still such a beautiful shade of purple, and it's gorgeous on 2 coats. And here is part 2 of the Rainbow Chip Realm collection all together. Again, we have those 3 blues in the corner, but like the first part, I would say that Deja Blue and Teal With It are probably closer, though they are still very different from each other at the same time. So not dupes. And here are both collections all together. So we have part 1, or the lights, on top, and then part 2 with the bolder and brighter colors on the bottom, so you can see a little side by side. But getting into comparisons, we're starting with Cotton Candy Crush and Bubble My Yum, which are the 2 pinks, and they are definitely very different from each other. Again, while I do love the pastel pink, I would call that more of a bubblegum pink than the darker shade, but yeah, definitely not dupes. And speaking of Bubble My Yum, I wanted to show this one next to Relationship Goals, which came out a couple of months ago. That one is more of a red-leaning pink shade, while Bubble My Yum is more blue-leaning, or like an orchid pink, sort of. So yeah, these are definitely not dupes, and between these 2, I think I prefer Relationship Goals. Next, for the oranges, we have just Peachy and then Papaya Don't Preach. So I feel like maybe they look a little similar in the bottles, but once they're on the nail, you can easily tell them apart. Just Peachy is a lot more on the pastel side, while Papaya Don't Preach is a lot more vibrant and more of a true orange. I think between these, I like just Peachy a little more. Next, for the yellows, we have Bananas for You next to the Bee's Knees. And I feel like on camera, these are looking a little bit more similar to each other than they actually are. I would say that Bananas for You is a little bit more muted maybe, or pastel, but the tones are definitely different, as you see, where the Bee's Knees is a little bit warmer aside from it being darker. Next, for the greens, we have Mint Chip Madness next to Guac My World, and these are definitely very different shades of green. I feel like you can tell just how minty Mint Chip Madness is, but yeah, these are both still super gorgeous, but I definitely prefer Mint Chip Madness just because it looks so much like the ice cream. And speaking of ice cream, I also wanted to compare this one to ILNP's Mint Chip from their spring collection earlier this year. And you can see they are very different shades. I still would consider them both minty shades, but ILNP is a lot brighter, white-based, and it almost has like a glowing neon quality to it. But the main difference is also the black specks in this one. ILNP, it's like barely there, very delicate, while it's just very packed in Mint Chip Madness. So you'll have to let me know which one you prefer. Now moving on to the blues, we have Teal or No Teal next to Teal With It. And I feel like you can tell these apart pretty well, where Teal or No Teal is a lot more of the pastel, lighter shade, while Teal With It is darker and a little bit dustier too. So between these, I definitely think I like Teal or No Teal more. Next for Sky High and Deja Blue, I feel like these are a little bit more on the similar side. Like, they're obviously not dupes for each other, but I feel like they're only a couple steps away from each other color-wise. So Sky High definitely still is lighter, and Deja Blue is like a little bit darker or dustier, but they're still kind of similar. But then for Posh and Periwinkle next to Blueberry Bliss, you can see like these are such stark differences. So yeah, even though Blueberry Bliss is considered the Periwinkle in the Part 2 collection, it definitely leans very blue, but it's like a dark Periwinkle at the same time. So I love both these, and I love that they are just so different from each other, but I think I would prefer Posh and Periwinkle. And lastly, for the purples, we have Lilac Lush next to Grape Scott, and these two I would say are very different from each other, where you can see just how light and pastel Lilac Lush is next to how vibrant and almost deeper Grape Scott is. So yeah, again, between these two, I think I'm leaning more towards Lilac Lush. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Painted Polish's Rainbow Chip Realm collections. As always, I would love to know what your thoughts are on these two releases, and especially if you have a preference between Part 1 or Part 2. I really like all the colors in them, but I feel like when I was doing the comparisons, I found myself just kind of gravitating more towards the lighter shades, which I think is interesting since now that we're in summer, I'm craving a lot of brighter colors. But I guess between these two collections, I don't know, I just like the lighter colors a little bit more, but obviously that's not to say I didn't enjoy the bright. But that being said, I kind of wish the lighter shades were like even more pastel, which I know is, you know, again, crazy considering it's like summer and they only released last month, so it wasn't like a full spring kind of collection. But I just wish they were a little bit more muted just so they can be a lot more different than the brights, because I feel like some of them are a little too close in tone to the brights. So I just wish they were like a little bit more farther from each other, if that makes sense. But yeah, and then going back to the black flakes, I know that we were kind of joking around in my unpopular opinions video about the black specks being ugly in polishes. And as far as these go, I mean, obviously I like them in some of the shades more than others, but that's mainly because I don't really like the yellow ones altogether. But overall, I did actually kind of like them because they do give me that like chocolate chip kind of vibe and like the rainbow colors. I think it's like a fun contrast. I almost wish there was like a little less of them though, because I don't know, in some of the swatches, I feel like they were just so many black flakies. So overall, I'm not hating the black flakes in these polishes, but you'll have to let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.